Hi everyone, I'm Wei Ting and I do outreach on nature and plants at NParks.
Hi, I'm Xuan from the Singapore Botanic Gardens and I work with orchids at the National Orchid Garden.
Welcome to the third edition of Gardening with Edibles.
The Gardening with Edibles program was launched in June and for some of you who signed up for our seed packets, you will probably have already started planting them and maybe some of you have started harvesting them and cooking them into delicious dishes.
At the last two Facebook Live sessions, you've heard from our colleagues on how to start your seedlings, transplant them, and build trellises. Today, we're going to be sharing with you on harvesting your plants, growing vegetables from leftover kitchen scraps, as well as caring for orchids.
That's right, and we'll be sharing with you how you can take care of orchids, as well as some orchids which are edible. So keep on watching to learn more.
So before we start on that, you guys must be wondering why there is a change in our setup for this live session. Yes, we are getting ready to bring you the Community Garden Festival. Sorry, I'm a bit excited. The Community Garden Festival, or CGF, is for gardening enthusiasts to exchange knowledge and celebrate the joy of gardening. Our theme for this year is Gardening with Edibles, of course.
Yes, and we've lined up a whole series of gardening-related talks and demos that you can take part in from home. There will also be live sessions where you can ask our in-house specialists how you can take care of your plants better and maybe help you to find out more about plant health issues. So check out our NParks website for more details.
All right, Xuan, look at these beautiful bell pepper plants.
They're so red.
Yeah, so from seed to fruit, this takes about 5 to 6 months.
Right, they look really yummy, but I don't remember bell peppers being on the list of seeds for gardening with edibles.
Yes, you are right. Although bell peppers are not on the list, the harvesting of fruited vegetables are pretty much the same. There's also another reason, but I'll share more about that in a bit. So to harvest fruited vegetables, first you need a pair of clean, sharp cutters. It can be scissors or secateurs like the ones I'm holding. Once you decide on the fruits you want to harvest, okay, like this one, okay, gently support it with one hand, locate the fruit stalk here, that keeps it attached to the plant, and with your cutter, make a clean cut about midway of the stalk.
Wow, it's a yummy bell pepper.
Yes, so it's important to make sure that your cutters are clean before cutting to prevent the spread of diseases that can harm your plant. So the cutting surface can harbor things like fungal spores or bacteria that can enter your plant when you cut them.
That's right, just like how you wash your hands, make sure you wash your cutters as well.
Yes. Okay, so now let me show you how to harvest leafy vegetables. So before we do that, I'm going to sanitize my cutters with alcohol swab. All right. So kangkong is a perennial vegetable. What that means is basically you can keep harvesting it even after cutting off some of the leaves. Unlike the annual vegetables like xiao bai cai, we have here a purple variety of the xiao bai cai. As well as other annual vegetables like lettuce and Japanese mustard. Okay. So the young leaves of the kangkong taste the most tender, so aim to cut about 2 to 3 leaf segments from the tip. So if you touch the stem, you feel that it progressively gets a bit tougher in the older parts of the stem.
Yeah, it's quite hard.
Yes.
I don't think I would want to eat that.
Right, so once again, clean, sharp cutters and cut above the leaf node. Here we go.
Yeah, another veggie you can cook.
All right. Quiz time, Xuan. Do you know what plant the kangkong is related to?
If I remember correctly, it's the morning glory.
Correct. That's a great answer. Okay, the kangkong's flowers are white, but the morning glory is purple, but they look the same. So you can find out more about other interesting information about the plants that you grow as well as the animals that you see around you on the NParks Flora and Fauna web.
All right, but before we move on, I think you wanted to tell us another thing about our bell peppers.
That's correct. Thank you for reminding me. So to those watching from home, if you want to challenge yourself and grow more unique edibles like the bell pepper. Okay, listen up, okay? Learn about how to grow chilies and capsicum from our gardening expert, Dr. Wilson. We will have a special online class during the Community Garden Festival on 24th October. If you're interested, find out more and sign up on our website.
Right, that's cool, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers out there are interested in growing chilies and capsicums. Okay, Wei Sing, I have another question because you brought a lot of food scraps here today to work. So why did you bring all of this here with you?
So, well, Siwan, would you like to stretch your dollar?
Of course, yeah. I'm sure our viewers want to as well.
Yes. You can do that by squeezing more out of your veggies. So that way, you can by regrowing them from kitchen scrap. So that way, you don't need to keep buying them all the time. And creating a garden from kitchen scrap is easy, and it can be fun to do if you are new to gardening, or like me, you just don't like to waste anything. So let's talk about the materials you need to try this DIY project at home. Okay, first you need a watertight container. You can easily reuse things like bubble tea cups, mineral water bottles, and a glass bottle like this. Next, you need toothpicks, rubber bands, and finally, water. So simple, right? Just
Yeah,
these
I
four
think you
things.
can get all of these quite easily at home.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So I am going to demonstrate with spring onions.
Okay, here's your spring onions. Looks so fresh.
Okay, come on, get the knife. Okay. So when you're preparing these for cooking, just make sure that you have a clean knife to make a straight, clean cut that leaves at least 1 to 2 centimeters of the bulb. I prefer to leave more, but that's really up to you. Minimally, you should have at least 1 to 2 centimeters. So it's best to choose spring onions that already have some roots, like you see here, okay? That way, the plant literally has a head start, okay? So I'm going to cut this. Siwan, would you like to try?
Okay, sure. So I just cut it
Yeah, go ahead.
just above the
Yeah, go ahead.
bulb. Okay, here you go. That was easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So this is the part you cook, right?
Yes.
Okay, and this is the
Don't
part you
waste
grow.
these.
Okay,
right.
well I see you prepared some here.
Yes.
You want to show the...
So after you cut a few of these, you can just tie them up with a rubber band at the ends here, and basically stick some toothpicks into the rubber band to balance them above the container, like here, if you can see them, like this.
So the roots will just grow into the water?
Yes, so fill the container with water until it's just covering the roots and a little bit more. Okay. Importantly, you should make sure to change the water in the container regularly to keep it clean, as well as to prevent mosquito breeding. So now place this container in a bright location, preferably with some indirect light, like beside a window. And in about 5 days, you will see the tips of young leaves sprouting. So
That's really fast, 5 days.
Yes, let me show you. So, yeah,
baby one.
Okay. So when the leaves get to your desired length, you can harvest them by just using a pair of scissors to cut off the green parts. So this can be left in the water for a short period and harvested about 3 times. Once properly rooted, the plants can be potted up in a potting mix and grown in a bright sunny spot that should receive at least 4 hours of sun daily. So here are some other herbs that I grew ahead of time. So this is wild mint. Let me just lift it up so you can see the roots. They root very quickly in water as well.
Oh wow, yeah, that's a lot of roots.
Yeah.
So how long would that take?
Also, this is about 3 weeks, really. Yeah. So this is Okinawan spinach. You can see the root. Oops, I tilted that. Sorry. Here, the roots are here.
Wow,
Also
yeah.
3 weeks.
Okay.
Just remember, sometimes you would need to remove a bit more of the leaf so that the plant doesn't lose so much water while it's growing the roots. Okay, so we're done. Before we move on, I wanted to share with you that for those of you with kids at home, this is also such a great activity to do with them.
Yeah, and it's really not very messy at all. If you look at our table, there's not that many tools and it's very clean.
Exactly. So it allows your child to connect with nature and learn to nurture living things. So a tip to get the little ones interested would be to choose vegetables that they like to eat to spark their curiosity. So, okay, Siwan, tell us a bit about what you'll be sharing with us today.
All right, well, I'll be sharing with you about how to take care of orchids, a little bit about edible orchids, as well as how you can use orchids to jazz up your food plating, right? So before we begin, maybe I'll start for the beginners who are watching us, who want to learn a little bit about taking care of orchids and you don't want to go into the advanced. Here are some easy orchids that you can take care of. All right, on my left over here, this is a mini Dendrobium. And this is very easy to take care of. Yeah.
It's really pretty.
Yeah, very pretty. And it's very free flowering. All you need to do is place it in a bright and sunny place. You can put it on your balcony, but don't keep it indoors. Like, don't put it in your kitchen where there's no sunlight, or don't put it in your toilet where with no windows. Make sure it's on the balcony, or place it outside in a garden. Okay, next, you need to water it regularly. So you should water this at least once a day, especially if it's very hot. We recommend that you water it once in the morning, and then if it needs more water, you can mist it in the evening as well. Okay. However, like if it's raining heavily for several days, like it has been for the past few days, make sure on the same day itself, don't water it right after the heavy rain. Let it dry, let its roots dry out completely first before the next water on the next day. Okay. And
yeah, I have this at home, and you're right, it's really very easy. I have it along my corridor.
Very easy, right?
I have flowers very regularly.
Very regularly. Do you fertilize yours?
Barely, actually,
Barely.
I have to admit.
Yeah. So it is quite easy to take care of. So if you do fertilize it with foliar fertilizer, it does produce longer sprays and also flowers more often for you.
Oh,
so you may want to
okay.
consider fertilizing it at least once a week with a foliar fertilizer. Okay, so that's a mini Dendrobium, and also behind us we also have another common hybrid, the pink flower, which you can see.
Oh, over here.
Yeah, you can bring that over. Okay, this is our next orchid that I wanted to show you. Do you know what this is?
It's a creeper.
Yeah, it's a creeper, that's right. So many of you would be familiar with the vanilla flavor, like vanilla flavor ice cream. But did you know that vanilla is also the most popular edible orchid in the world? And it grows as a creeper, and usually in the wild, it grows up trees very, very tall so that it can reach the sunlight, right? Okay. But if you look at this plant over here, you may find it strange because it's all green, and there are no flowers at all,
yes.
right? So vanilla planifolia, which is where we get our vanilla seed pod from, it doesn't commonly flower in Singapore.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it needs specific conditions, but it does flower quite freely overseas, like in places like Philippines or Mexico or Madagascar, where the plant is cultivated for their seed pods. Okay, maybe Wei-Ting, do you want to show them what the seed pod looks like?
Yes, here we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So
I know our viewers can't smell it, but the whole room is filled with the aroma of vanilla right now. It's really very fragrant.
Yeah, vanilla is very, very fragrant, and especially if you buy the seed pod. And this is vacuum packed, but we can smell it as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Vanilla seed pods, like this one here, they are not generally processed in Singapore. And that's because the process of curing it is very long and is quite complicated.
Oh,
okay, so we don't recommend that you process your vanilla seed pods at home. You're probably better off just buying it at your supermarket or at your baking shop. Okay? Yeah. All right, and the next thing I wanted to show you was another orchid product. So here we have some orchid tea, right? So this orchid tea, it's orchid flavored tea, which you can get from the gardens shop in the Singapore Botanic Gardens. Wei-Ting, do you want to try some?
Yep, you don't need to ask me twice.
All right, okay.
All right.
So
thank you.
Fragrant, right?
It's very fragrant, and it has like a hint of vanilla. Very nice.
Very nice. Yeah, so you can, as I mentioned, it's from the garden shop in the Singapore Botanic Gardens. Now, even though they're used for teas, you do notice that we don't usually see orchids in cooking, and that's because orchids are generally quite tasteless, right? But you do see orchids on your plates, right? And we normally use orchids as a decorative item for food plating, okay? But we typically don't eat them, or we don't fry them, you know? So here we have a salad, and we're just going to show you some orchids that we can use for food plating. So Wei Ting has a vendacious orchid. So this is a vendacious orchid that Wei Ting is holding, and this is a common Dendrobium that you may find at home. So both of these kinds can be used for food plating, but make sure that before you put them on your plate, you give them a good wash so that they are clean. Okay. So Wei Ting, you want to give some food plating a go? You can just pluck the orchid off.
I would love to.
All right.
Okay.
So look, like orchids are so brightly colored, and they really make your food stand out and make it so much prettier and so much more appetizing.
How do you like my art?
Very nice. Yeah. So you can just make sure that you give them a good wash, and then you can place place it on your plate. And like such a simple salad like this, you can, jazz it up by just using, 1 or 2 flowers.
Yes, I would imagine you can find this salad now in a high-end restaurant. Wonderful.
Thanks, Wei Ting. Well, I hope that all of our viewers found our sharing today useful and interesting, and you also had fun. And now let's move on to the even more fun section, which is the question and answer section.
So before we take your live questions, we will start with a few common questions that we've been getting on our channels.
All right, the first question is a common question which I'll be giving to Wei Ting, okay? So I found caterpillars on the leaves of my kangkong. How do I remove them and prevent them from coming back?
Okay, so first let's establish that the kangkong is an edible plant that you want to eat for the leaves. So one way would be to prevent the butterflies from laying their eggs on the kangkong leaves. So you can construct a netting structure using PVC pipes or bamboo, short little bamboo poles, and then wrapping fine mesh netting around this structure and placing it over your vegetable kangkong plot. So
that doesn't sound too difficult.
Yes, it's very fun actually to construct that.
Yeah.
So second option would be to remove the caterpillars with your hands. So please wear gloves because some caterpillars do have irritating hairs on them. Especially if you have sensitive skin, you want to be able to protect yourself from that. So manually remove the caterpillars, and basically you're done. Yep.
Okay. Well, how about the second question?
So the next question for Xuan is, my lady's fingers leaves have been dropping off. Why is this so?
Okay, well, leaves dropping, there are several reasons, and it could be just part of the natural process where the leaves grow old and then they shed themselves naturally. Now, as long as your plant is healthy and it's not affected by any pests or diseases, which you can see because you'll be able to see caterpillars, or you'll be able to see the leaves yellowing or turning black and dropping off, then you know that your plant is healthy, so that's okay. But one of the other common reasons why leaves drop off is because you're not watering it enough. So if your plant is dehydrated, normally the leaves and the stems, they will start to wilt, and also parts of your plant will start to turn brown, and then the leaves will naturally all fall off. So make sure that you water your plants very regularly, at least once a day.
Okay.
So, okay. Oh, okay, that's your question. All right, my brinjal plant is flowering, but it's not fruiting. And when it flowers, the flowers fall off before the fruits are produced. So why is this so?
Right, so there could be a few reasons. One of them could be that the plant lacks the energy to set the fruit. So please remember to fertilize your plant as well as to give it sufficient light and water. Another reason could be that the pollinators just have not visited your flower. But don't worry, you can always hand pollinate the flowers by using a paintbrush or a cotton bud. Gently remove the pollen from one flower and dab it onto the stigma of another flower. So now, let's move on to the live Q&A session.
Okay, the exciting part where we answer your questions live. All right, so let's see what questions we have.
It's okay to bring it up.
Do you want to start first?
Sure. Oh, geez, it's moving really fast.
Wow, there are a lot of good questions over
Yes.
here. All right, maybe I will start with this one. What is a good deterrent for grasshoppers? A question by Jotbot. Thank you for your question. So this is, I think Wei Jing mentioned that if you do have grasshoppers, and grasshoppers sometimes do eat vegetables as well. It is best actually, because these vegetables are edible, is if you use a netting that you can construct with PVC pipes or bamboos and cover your plant to protect them from the grasshoppers.
Yes. Okay, the next question we have is from Wong Yi Li. And the question is, why is this kailan stem so thin and long and not like the market types where the stem is thick? So it is likely that the kailan is not getting enough sunlight, so it's etiolating. What that basically means is that the stem is getting very long. So you should probably give it more light, at least 4 hours of good sunlight daily.
Okay, yeah, good light is important for all plants. So make sure you find a bright spot, preferably a balcony or bright window. Don't put it in the corner of your living room.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. All right, so the next question is from Janice Chan, and she asks, I have a Dendrobium orchid that flowers periodically, but it doesn't seem to be growing new keikis. So new keikis are the new growths that grow out from the side of the plant, and those are vegetative growths, meaning they are stems with leaves. Okay, so her plant is not growing new keikis. The potting medium has not been changed since I got it a few years ago. What does this orchid need to grow new keikis? So I think she knows that her orchid her orchid needs something to grow, and it would be best if you are able to repot your orchid, preferably in a fresh media. Now, if yours is a Dendrobium, it would be best if you pot it in a new pot and make sure the pot is clean and sterilized, and then use a fresh batch of charcoal and then repot your Dendrobium. Now, your Dendrobium will take a while to establish, maybe a few months, before it will start producing any new keikis. Now, to encourage the keikis to grow, you also need to continue to water it daily and also fertilize it with a fertilizer once a week.
All right, so let's move on to the next question by Miss Josephine Chua. So her question is, how frequent should I fertilize vegetable plants? So I'm going to separate this question into two parts. There's the fruited vegetables as well as the leafy vegetables. For fruited vegetables, I would recommend at least once every fortnight, so once every 2 weeks, using a fertilizer that you can buy from the local nurseries. If you want it for leaf, you get the one that supports leaf growth, and if you want one for fruits, you get one for fruit growth. For leafy vegetables, we don't actually need to fertilize it when it is really growing. We would recommend that when you plant, after you have the little seedling, make sure that the soil media that you are using is rich in organic matter. And since the leafy vegetables have a very short growing period, they grow very quickly, that starting potting mix is very important. And you can easily just harvest it straight out without adding further fertilizer.
Okay. All right, so we've got another question about orchids, which is, how do you make your orchid flower from bubbles? So this is a very common question that we get. And because, of course, when you buy your orchid from the nursery, it normally comes with very nice, bright, and full blooms. But after a while, you will notice that your orchid flowers will start to fade, and then you wonder, how do I make my orchid flower again, right? Okay, so of course, the easy way to make your orchid flower again is make sure that you provide it with the three important ingredients, right? So
yes.
Enough sunlight and the correct amount of sunlight, enough water. Usually we water orchids once a day, and if it's hot, you should water it twice a day, and also make sure that you provide it with fertilizer. Yep. So in order to make orchids flower, you do need to give it a fertilizer that is higher in phosphorus and potassium. So you can look for those with higher P and K, right? So normally they will put it as a flowering fertilizer when you go to the shops to look for your fertilizer.
Right.
Okay?
Okay, so the next question by Ms. Adeline Neo. Her question is, the leaves of my vegetables like kangkong, butterfly pea, are turning yellow. What can I do to turn them green again, and what should I do in future to prevent yellowness? So this actually sounds like the plants lack fertilizer, particularly nitrogen. So just a general fertilizer regularly, according to the fertilizer's instructions, would be good enough to help make it green again. But importantly, you also need to make sure there's enough light and water. But fertilizer is the key here right now. Yep. Okay.
Okay, we have a similar question that we answered previously, which was, why is my lady's finger flower bud always yellowish and falling off? I think this was mentioned that fertilizer is very important, so make sure that when your plant is starting to flower or starting to fruit, that you provide it with enough nutrients, okay, which comes in the form of fertilizer. Okay. Would you like to take this question?
Sure, go ahead.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
So Jolene Tan's question, Ms. Jolene says, can I plant my seeds in the grass verges of my estate? So we recommend that you plant your seeds in your home garden, on your balcony and along the corridors. Grass verges should be kept clean and neat. So if you would like to actually plant with your neighbors, you can actually set up a community garden to do that. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds fun, and I would love to do that with my neighbors as well. Yeah. Okay. I'll take this question by Mark To. Thank you for your question. It says, what is the vanilla orchid called? So the species name for the vanilla orchid that we normally use for vanilla flavoring is Vanilla Planifolia. So this is the species that is cultivated, but there are also many other vanilla species in the wild which are not cultivated for the vanilla flavoring. Okay, so just to repeat, it's Vanilla Planifolia.
Okay, so this question by Ms. Shelley Tan, she asked, can you advise what we should do after the sunflower has withered? Should I cut it off, and at what point? So usually after the sunflower has withered, if you look at the flower head, you'll be able to see that there are actually seeds in there. So you can harvest these seeds and grow new sunflowers. Isn't that excellent? Nature is wonderful. So at which point should you do that? You will notice that the flowers have sort of like tilted downwards and are looking a bit dry and brown. So at that point, you should be able to harvest them. Yep.
Okay. We have a question from April Lee, and the question is, there are mushrooms growing in my vegetable pots. Are the mushrooms growing in my vegetable pots harmful to the soil and plants, and how do I stop them? So normally, there's mushrooms growing if the soil is contaminated with fungal spores. So one of the ways you can stop them from growing is by changing out the soil media and buying a fresh media from the nurseries or the gardening retail shops, and make sure that the bag is closed up. Yeah.
Okay, so the next question by Lin Min Yi, and the question goes, can I harvest Tysin by cutting the leaves, or do I uproot the whole plant? Some leaves are still very small. Can I continue to grow them? So maybe I will just demonstrate how to harvest leafy vegetables with the ones that we have here.
Yep.
Just give us a minute. So once again, I'm going to clean my cutters. So we don't recommend uprooting the whole vegetable. Okay, that way you actually bring the soil up and you might actually dirty your leaves. You want to keep it as clean as possible. What you want to do is just lift it up slightly and just aim just below here. Can I lift it up higher? No, okay. And cut. Ta-da!
Yeah, that looks so yummy
Right.
and juicy, juicy vegetables.
So after you harvest it, if you want to reuse your pot, you can just empty it out and take out the roots. So that way you have a clean piece of vegetable and you don't need to wash it so thoroughly, like all the soil debris in there. So if there are still, if your vegetable is not large enough, you might want to consider growing it a bit longer. Make sure that there's enough sunlight and water, and it will get to about this size. Okay. Okay.
Okay, that looks good. All right. Okay, so there's a question from Ken Sengo, and the question is, my balcony does not have direct sunlight. Will the plant get the necessary light for photosynthesis? Okay, well, it's okay if the balcony does not get direct bright sunlight, and it also depends on what plant that you have. Because if it is a shade plant, then it will handle growing on a balcony well. But if you are trying to grow a plant that loves full sun, let's say you are trying to grow like a kangkong or another type of leafy vegetable that requires very bright light, then your plant may not grow as well. Even though it may grow, but it may not grow, it may not fill up the pot and be very bushy. So it's best if you try and find somewhere for, if your plant is sun-loving, to put it in a place with bright sunlight.
Okay. So next question by Ms. Rose Tan. I'm going to demonstrate this again. It's easier that way. So the romaine lettuce, she asked that, how can I grow the ends of a romaine lettuce? Okay. So the romaine lettuce is going to be similar to Tycine. After you've harvested your vegetable, just make sure you just cut about like this length, not all the way to the end. So from here, just make sure that the ends are in water, not too high up because you might end up getting the stems here to rot. So just a little bit of water and constantly change the water. And then you'll see that the tips of young leaves will actually start to sprout from the center. So please try that at home. It's fun. Okay. Shall I take the next question?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, the next question by Ms. Jen Chong. She asked, I tried to grow lime using seeds, but why does it not grow? So we don't usually grow lime plants from seeds because it takes a really long time. I would recommend that you just buy a plant directly from the nursery. That way you can get your fruit faster. We don't really have that much time to wait for lime plants to bear fruit.
Yeah.
It can take maybe a year even. So,
okay, maybe I have a question for you. So I did grow limes before, but somehow the fruits were like, it fruited a lot for a period of time, then after it didn't fruit so much anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, and then after that, the leaves started to shed.
My question to you, the three things. Is there enough sunlight? Lime is a sun-loving plant, so it has to receive full sun, a lot of full sun, 6 hours maybe a day. Does it get enough sunlight?
Yeah, it did.
Okay. Water?
Okay.
How often do you water it?
So does it need water every day?
Preferably, in Singapore's climate, plants actually lose water very quickly in the heat of the day. So water it regularly. It also depends on the potting mix that you're using. If it's a very clayey mix, it actually holds a lot more water for longer. But if it's a regular potting mix, you might need to water it more regularly.
Okay.
And importantly, because of the fruit issue, whenever we talk about fruit, it's always very energy intensive for the plant, which means that you have to fertilize it. So look for a fertilizer that supports fruit growth from your local nursery.
All right. Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take this question. Hi, Valerie Aoyong. So her question is, do we need to apply pesticides weekly even if we don't see any pests? So if you don't see any pests, you don't need to apply any pesticides. Normally we apply pesticides if the pest really can't be controlled. So for example, if it's caterpillars, you can just pick the caterpillars off. In that case, you wouldn't need any pesticides at all, especially like what Wei Ting mentioned before. If you're going to be eating the vegetable, you may not want to put pesticides on it.
Okay. Okay, the next question from Miss Linda Jo. I hope I got your name right, I'm sorry. Her question is, my melon plant has no female flowers. How do I promote flowering? So melon flowers they actually come one after the other. You get the male flower, then you get the female flower. So you have to wait for a bit. It will take a few weeks. But some plants might actually have male and female plants as well. So it really depends on your cultivar as well. Okay.
Okay, that's really interesting that the flowers are sequential. All right.
Yeah, so that is actually an evolutionary strategy to prevent sort of like inbreeding, so that you have more robust genetic material passed on to the next generation. You get sweeter fruits, bigger fruits, that sort of like theory.
Okay, the next question is from Charlotte. Thank you, Charlotte. And her question is, where can I buy potting mix? So potting mix is quite readily available in most gardening retail centers, or if you go to the plant nurseries, you should be able to find potting mix. I believe that some supermarkets nowadays do also sell potting mix, but I think those are the
just general potting mix.
Yeah.
Or it's just general potting mix.
General potting mix, that's right.
Yep. Okay, Ms. Vereen Cole, she asked, how do you get rid of small flying insects around the lady's fingers and kangkong without killing the insects? One way would be to build the netting, like we talked about, but that only really applies for the kangkong because you're eating it for the leaves. But for lady's fingers, if you want the fruit, you would have to leave it open so that the pollinators can get to it, or you hand pollinate. If you're going to hand pollinate, you can still use the netting structure to protect it from pests that attack your plants. Yep. But if you are okay with getting rid of the insects, I can recommend the yellow sticky tape. Just hang it around the plants, and the insects typically get stuck onto the yellow sticky tape while flying around your plant. Yep.
So where can you get the yellow sticky paper from?
Also from your local nurseries.
All right. Okay. The next question is from Deborah. So Deborah asks, I bought a Kefir lime from the nursery. It's in full sunlight, and she's been giving it fertilizer and watering it. But it hasn't grown ever since, and not a single leaf. What am I doing wrong? There could be multiple reasons for this. Firstly, you would want to check if your Kefir lime is being attacked by any pests. So check the leaves to make sure that they are healthy and intact. Or have they been eaten by any pests? If they have been eaten by any pests, then it wouldn't have the capacity to grow more if it's eaten up. Another reason could be because when you buy it from the nursery, it could have been put in a very, very small pot, and it needs to be repotted into a larger pot so that the roots are able to expand and grow. Yeah, so you might want to buy a larger pot, and a little bit more potting mix so that your plant roots can grow.
Okay. Okay, this question by Ms. Lena Tan. She's asking if neem oil is safe to use on edible plants to prevent insects and pests. Yes, neem is an organic pesticide, so it's actually okay to use on edible plants. You can use it to get rid of things like aphids, soft-bodied insects, basically. But do be careful as well, because there is some known toxicity to the friendly insects like bees as well. Okay.
Right, so don't overdo it.
Yes, don't overdo it. Everything in moderation.
That's right. Okay, So I've got a question from Cecilia Tan, and she asks, is morning sun better than afternoon sun? Okay, I might need some help from waiting, but from what I know, different plants require different amounts of sunlight, and it really depends on what plant you have. Some will do better because afternoon sun generally it's much hotter, so it might dry out the plant if it gets too much of noontime and afternoon sun. So we will need to know which plant you have so that we can help you better.
So Ms. Deborah Yong asked...
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I've answered that.
You answered that, the Kefir leaf? Oh, okay.
Oh. Okay, how about this one? Would you like to take this one?
Sure. What type of what type of fertilizers are good for our vegetables, especially since we are going to consume them? Organic fertilizers are good. You can use compost, but that will require regular composting. That's basically it. Okay, so we have time for 2 more questions. Suan, do you want to pick one?
All right, I will do one more question, which is from Karen Chong. Thank you, Karen. So she wants to know, how do you repot orchids? So it depends on what orchid you have. I assume, because it's the most common, most people grow common Dendrobium hybrids. So you would usually want to remove your existing old potting media, and you might want to remove a little bit of the old potting media and repot it in a fresh, clean pot with new charcoal. For more information, you might want to watch one of our videos that we previously made on how to grow orchids.
Okay. So the last question by Noel Ng, he asked, if there are black spots on the leaves of my lady's fingers plants, can I apply neem oil with water? So neem oil is meant to combat soft-bodied insects. These black spots sound like it could be bacterial or fungal origin. So what you want to do is take note of how you're watering them and when you're watering your plants. Usually, if there's water left standing on the leaves towards the evening period or night time especially, it actually encourages these fungal and bacteria to grow onto your leaves. So best to water earlier in the morning so that the water can dry off. Yeah. Okay. Thank you everybody for joining us today and for your support for the Gardening with Edibles program. If we didn't manage to answer your questions during the program, don't worry, we'll get back to you in a bit. So for more gardening resources, check out our website or NParks SG YouTube.
All right, the Gardening with Edibles program is brought to you by NParks and jointly supported by our founding partners, DBS Bank and Tote Board through the Garden City Fund.
So it has been a fruitful session today, and if you want to watch it again, this session will be put online for viewing on our Facebook and YouTube channels.
Remember to check out our website for more information about the many activities that we've lined up for you for this Community Gardening Festival, which is happening on the 24th and 25th of October, which is this month.
Yes, and if you're interested in the online class on growing chilies and capsicum by Dr. Wilson Wong, sign up now before the slots are taken up.
That's right, sign up now.
So find out more and sign up on our website.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you. Yeah. And we'll see you next time. Tune in for our next session next month.
Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.